So welcome back. And we are now on item 12, which is our Arts and Culture Regional Programme. And welcome, Richard. Warm welcome.
Hi. I'm here to... Kia ora everyone. Here today to talk about the Arts and Culture Regional Programs. This is the same presentation we do every year. Now, normally we do it just on our CapEx program, but we thought to add context and a bit of an overview, we would do all of our programs together, just so as you know the extent of the work that we do in the regional space. The program complements our local board programs, which we've got 21 across the region, obviously. And our program looks to deliver and bring to life the goals of Toi Whātiki, there being participation, investment, infrastructure, placemaking, identity, and the creative economy. We've had a real focus on the creative economy one for this year. So Auckland has a robust and flourishing creative economy. One of the things that we want to focus on is a more sustainable work program. And we mean sustainable in terms of healthy businesses that are making sensible, prudent, financially prudent decisions, and also sustainable in the environmental aspect as well. And so a lot of that lens has been taken to our partners and also to our own programs. So we've got three programs. We've got our regional program, which is our non-CapEx program, our OPEX, and that's made up of Toi Māori, inclusion and representation, placemaking, music, digital and online, and sector responsiveness. Our middle po there is our regional funding program, and we've got our contestable funding and our non-contestable funding. And the last one, our CapEx program for public art. For the first time ever, we've actually tried to describe the types of public art that we do. So we've got hero initiatives, integrated, cultural and community markers, digital, gifts, and a repairs and renewals program. So just on our non-built program, they're the programs that I just listed before. Our first one, Toi Māori, in the next 12 months, we've got our Waitangi Ki Manukau program. This is the council-delivered Waitangi celebrations in Manukau. It was originally a community event, and it, in the last few years, has come back to council. And we're in negotiations at the moment to hand it back to community. We have an aspiration for it to be iwi-led. We're quite committed, again, to have an extended program, so as well as the concert sort of aspect. This year we're extending it to have an education program that will last over a week, sort of a treaty expo, placemaking, guest speakers and music events. So it's actually widening the actual education aspects. It's not just a concert. Matariki 2020, the dates are in the process of being chosen according to the lunar calendar and in consultation with the next iwi hosts. So the transfer from this year was Tainui, and the transfer from iwi to iwi happens around the iwi table. We don't decide ourselves. It is the Māori is passed on from iwi to iwi through negotiations amongst themselves, and we provide the environment for that to happen. As well as that, we've also got a kaupapa Māori programs across all of our arts facilities as a Māori responsiveness lens. We also have responsive opportunities as things come in during the year, and also Māori Language Week is growing in terms of our involvement as well. Inclusion and representation, we've changed the focus of how we do our programs. We would have seen a lot of genre stuff happen before. Now we've taken a focus on the outcomes and the communities that are affected by our programs. So we've got Pacific Arts, but Asian, youth, those are all things that we've had every single year and are growing from strength to strength. But this year we've included some new sectors: interculturalism, the rainbow community, seniors, and accessibility. What we've done here is, instead of doing, we've focused on not doing a whole lot of extra stuff, but doing what we've always done, but in a very clear, directed and purposeful manner. So those last 1, 2, 3, 4 are actually new programs that extend the existing stuff that we do. So in other words, we take a program that's tried and true, and we say, okay, let's extend it and make it applicable to the seniors community, to the rainbow community, or make it more accessible. So not doing more, but doing what we do better. We will continue doing our placemaking. Some people ask us, how's this art? And we often just go, shh, don't ask that question. Placemaking is about connecting people with the place, and art is a great way of doing that, and they don't need to necessarily know that it's art that they're experiencing. It's the human connection, it's the ability to interact with the space that you're in, and we'll continue doing our placemaking programs such as POP around the region. A music program, we do music in two forms predominantly. The SUSO, which is the Stand Up, Stand Out festival out south, and that's often invisible to a lot of the region, but is an incredible investment in time and impact. We know that online, our digital impact each day, whilst the festival is running, is around about 5,000 clicks online per day, and that's reaching a demographic that we often don't get. We'll also continue our initiatives with the UNESCO City of Music. Digital and online, that's a new program that we're starting, recognising that things are moving to a digital space. The exciting projects here are an online present for Auckland Public Art. This will be a website and on your phone. You'll be able to stand in any location, open up your phone, and it will tell you the works of arts that are around you, the history of them, and the wider story. So not just the story that the artist is telling, but the stories of protests, the stories across the years, stories of what happened prior to that piece of art being there, how that land was used. So this continues the debate. It continues to tell stories and a more fulsome story. So we do have some monuments, particularly our Victorian monuments, that are perhaps a little bit one-sided when you read information about them. This will be an opportunity to actually hear what other people think and contribute in that wider, deeper story. And it will all fit in your pocket, of course. The second key thing we're doing in the digital space is exploring video screens and video walls to produce digital art and take that medium to the public. This also allows a very responsive, quick and cost-effective way to deliver messages and artwork around the place. Our Arts and Culture regional programs, you'll be largely familiar with that. We have two pots, a contestable and a non-contestable. The contestable funding up there is 2.2 million, and the reason I put the money up for this one is to show the reach of that. We do project grants at a regional space, and we fund strategic relationships with the organisations up there listed, Basement Theatre through to Art Space. They have a huge impact on our community and our city, and continue to partner with us on a number of other programs as well. Then we've got our project grants, which are about 400 projects, and our Creative Community Scheme. Creative Community Scheme is 1 million of that contestable funding, and that is a direct contract from Creative New Zealand. Of that, 304 local community groups are supported. There was 46,000 active participants. They're the people actually presenting the art, and a projected audience of around 800,000 people. And the project value sets 5.6 million there. That is what is generally leveraged out of our $1 million investment from Creative New Zealand. So it shows the impact and added value and leveraging opportunity that we get when we use a funding scheme. And non-contestable funding is about $1 million of that. And that goes to the Tutuhi operations, Q Theatre operations, and also a grant to the Festival of Photography. And our public art program has the following, and I'm just going to show you some highlights. And I want to start with what we're calling hero initiatives. So these are our big ticket items that are highly impactful and generate a discussion. And I chose the boy walking because it is a bit of a turning point for how we market and how we talk about art in Auckland. And a couple of people, they always come up to me after an artwork gets launched and says, "Oh, how are you doing with the controversy?" And sometimes it's pretty rough, and other times it's really great. And this is an example of where it's really great. People were asking, why is it a boy walking? Why is the boy Caucasian? Why is he walking away from the city? What is he walking to? And that was carried out in the media, and that was absolutely brilliant. Those are the questions we need to be talking about as a society, and it's not an accident at all. We've had a work on the waterfront that raised the issue of housing and created a lot of conversation around housing. This creates a conversation around gender and ethnicity and representation. That's the conversation that we had. During this debate, or during this kōrero with the media, there was very little talk about the cost and the investment, and that's exactly right. We should be focusing on the issues, and we are keen to continue bringing works that do create a dialogue and discussion, and they should mirror, challenge, and represent some of the conversations that happen around this chamber. And so we want to continue doing that. We do not want art that people simply walk past and go, well, that was nice. So some of our hero initiatives, we've got a Madden and Oldie work down in the Wynyard Quarter, which will be presenting a Te Ao Māori narrative. We've got a video wall and a tunnel of light, both works that will be inside the City Rail link. And we're currently working with Judy Miller on a work entitled Pink Ribbon, which is a large-scale work somewhere in the region. And we tried with one park, and we're very conscious to make sure we get the right park and the right connection with people. And we're resiting or trying to find a new location for that particular work at the moment. But again, they will be large-scale and generate conversations. We've also got our integrated works. This is where we apply art to the surroundings of Auckland to make it more beautiful, to combat things like predatory spaces or change traffic flows of pedestrians, all those sorts of things. And we've got the Atara Creek pedestrian bridge, the balustrades along the Manukau walkway. The work that you're showing there is still an artist concept, but it's for the underpass going under Merrill Drive into Myers Park. And suddenly you can see that this is a space that you might feel comfortable walking through and entering and enjoying our park. Also, Jubilee Bridge out in Panmure Basin and the stable elements, which is the design of the overall city rail. We will continue, of course, to do our cultural and community markers. These are the works that happen in a suburb and reflect either the communities of the suburb or communities of interest or ethnic communities or marking of Po, etc. like that. So we've got the Beacon in Milford Reserve. We've got Circles of Virtues in Onehunga, Lost and Found, which is in Federal Street, Warkworth Lights, Warkworth Lights. An example of what we're trying to do in the environment and sustainability space is doing things like the Warkworth Lights, looking at solar powered rather than any other connecting to the grid, etc. We also have a renewals and repairs and maintenance program. This often goes under the radar, but it's worth actually highlighting. We've got a work up there called Wind Tree. People love the Wind Tree. It's so much better in here where it's placed as to where it was before. We're slowly replacing that at the moment, truss by truss. It's come to the end of its life, and through our renewals program we are replacing it. People will never notice it, but they'll still be able to enjoy the same art, and we're in conversation with the artist family and making sure everything is up to spec. We're doing a few minor changes with the wells and the type of stainless steel that it's constructed of. Those kind of things happen all the time. And Flight Trainer is the Greer Twists Albatross. And if you remember the Albatross that used to be on Quay Street, we're moving them onto the wharf in Devonport and creating a new structure underneath them that's a little bit more user-friendly than what was there originally. So we take care of that collection for future generations. And through the chair, I'd like to open up for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard. Councillor Casey.
One comment and two questions. My comments about boy walking, and I agree, Richard, I've had not one negative comment about boy walking. To the contrary, everybody said it's an amazing work and it livens the place up. So congratulations on that. It was a really good event to open as well. My two questions relate to two things you didn't mention in your kōrero, and one is the suffrage sculptures, which were quite controversial and temporary. Can you just mention the four of those, please? please.
Thank you so much. So that's an ongoing program. We decided to do a temporary platform around. Now, temporary in the public art world, we're talking 5 years. It was to not only recognise the themes of 125 suffrage, but also to use an opportunity to give emerging women artists the opportunity to, at a low investment rate, dip their toes in the water. And it was a difficult process. It was controversial from times. But it's what we expected in terms of building that capacity and learning and interacting with the artist community. Of them, we've got some really quite radical works. The work in Kalani Park in Takapuna is called Soapbox, quite conceptual, and is up for a Best Awards, which is hugely impressive. So that's a nationally recognised design awards. We will continue the program of the suffrage works for 5 years, and then we'll change it to a new theme.
Kid Justice in Howick.
Kid Justice is in place. It had a little bit of damage. We've repaired it. It created a really interesting debate. Unfortunately, the questions we were hoping around body image of women and representation of women wasn't explored as much as we liked, and that's part of our change in our marketing to realise that a $50,000 work is as controversial as an $800,000 work, and we need to treat them the same way. So that's a learning for us.
And my second question and final is you're talking about Victorian statues where only one side of the story is told. I'm interested in the one-sided Lord Auckland that was removed from outside the Civic Building and is now in storage, and where you're going to put them, and if you're going to put them anywhere, or send them back to India, where he came from.
So at the moment, he's been removed purely for the development of the CAB building. It is usual for we do a replacement of work to just put it back in the same place within a few metres, etc. If it gets resited, it would go through quite a lengthy process, but we do have that option available. So we haven't decided yet. We're waiting to see the final designs and how it will interact with the space. It is an interesting sculpture when you read back on it and read back on the history of who it represents. It also plays a part of our story of who we are as a nation, who we are as a city. And what we don't want to do, and part of that app that we were talking about, is we don't want to put things away and pretend they never happened or pretend stories don't exist. But what we do have a responsibility to do is talk the wider story and say, hey, what does this mean? What have other people said about it? And I refer, the story I love is there's a sculpture up the top of Wakefield Street that even the most kind and liberal person reading the plaque would be horrified. And it talks about, it's a statue talking about the friendly Māori who helped fight in the land wars. And when you read the work, it suddenly you have a lot of questions. And it's been the victim of graffiti and etc. And we've got pictures and stories of it having a plastic axe glued to its forehead. And it's actually a fantastic image. So we don't want to remove that work because it's a beautiful work, it's beautiful bronze. There's an artisan in England who spent a lot of time working on it. Misguided or the wrong story may well be. But what we want to be able to do is hold up that app, see it, and then on the app be able to open up that story about the controversy, see it with the axe in its head and go, well, why? And why did the plaque say this in 1901? And what does it mean? And what have we learned? And that's how we will change as a nation and understand who we are. We can't erase history. We've got to own it and explore it.
Thank you. I'm very glad our little suffrage statue survived. That would have been very sad. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, thank you for that. My question is a question on the renewals of existing, how you sort of renew the OPEX associated with the renewals of the art. And the reason I ask this is that we've done some pretty fancy stuff with playgrounds. And what I'm finding is that the bits that you think are going to break come from way overseas and they break, and then there's this huge delay in getting them delivered. How sure are we that we have in quite good times and preparation for the renewals, so that kind of thing doesn't happen in our art space?
It's a really tricky question, and I think it's something we've been grappling with because we're aware that our collection of around 400 pieces actually isn't the collection that we perhaps want in the future. We've got a lot of things that have been very well meaningly sort of donated or gifted to council, and we're going to have to face the conversation about which ones we keep, which ones are precious to us, and which ones we renew. And that's going to be a difficult conversation that we're working through how we deal with that. Going forward, people often go, why does it take so long to make art? And it is all of those studies and renewals and all of those, the background stuff that we do that is slower now than it used to be, but it ensures that we have a replacement program before we accession anything in. It has a maintenance schedule and asset management plan associated with it. And I refer back to the O'Connell Street mirror, that people will just, gosh, how did that take so long, and all that work and expense to do that pre-work of the heritage stuff. Well, we've just had incredible wins through Auckland in the last few weeks, and we've had no damage to the work. We've had no damage to the heritage buildings that it's attached to, and that's all due to those engineering reports, the 3D scanning, all of those kind of things. So we're dealing with it proactively in the new works, and retrospectively we're looking at the works and saying, well, look, what are the works that are going to come to the end of their life, and we're going to go, they've had their day, they've been amazing, we photograph them, but we actually de-accession them.
Yeah, two questions. One's actually a little bit similar as a follow-up to Councillor Simpson. So, given our budget is so damn limited, unfortunately, and if I had my say, it'd be much more, but anyway, it's not the love around the table for that. How much do you put into the fact of what OPEX could cost subsequently, or the maintenance? And you had this slide of the Japanese work, I'm sorry, the name...
Wind Tree, yeah.
Wind Tree that used to be right down the bottom of Queen Street, and goodness knows that's been bashed around by the winds for many years. It's in a better spot now, but that's a very expensive thing, and I don't know how many times that's been fixed. So that's my first question.
Yeah. So there's two aspects here. There's repairs and maintenance, which allows the work to reach the end of its lifespan, and that is OPEX. So that is things like our bronze polishing program. We have a bronze program in Auckland where we go and polish all the statues. That's OPEX. At the end of its life is a replacement. So the Wind Tree, it reached the end of its life last year, in terms of our CAPEX, and now it has a replacement budget, which is CAPEX for redoing those trusses. And the work that we're doing on the trusses means that they'll actually have an extended lifespan, so it won't require the amount of OPEX that we've had to do with minor welds, etc. So part of it is, again, in that forward planning, and often at the design stage, we go through the idea framework that council has. We might actually stop a project, and we're being braver with that when we get through to certain stages. We'll look at something, look at the long-term costs, and go, actually, this is going to be an anchor around our necks. We can't afford this work, and sometimes it comes at a cost that we're unhappy with. We'd like to do more green works with plants, etc., but they require green walls and the like. They require a lot of maintenance and a lot of OPEX, so we sometimes shy away from those. But again, that pre-work before we actually commission an artwork is all done on those feasibilities to budget it.
And how well is your asset management plan for other artworks which are out in the suburbs? And let's just take Olympic Park and New Lynn, for example, where there's about 10 works. I mean, is that on a proper asset management plan? And, and an example, one of the works there is a fantastic po, and there's 4 or 5 of them in the west. I mean, they do need work on them on a fairly regular basis because it's timber. So, convince me that it's all under control.
Po we're really happy with. That's contracted out to a couple of companies that deal direct with the iwi who are responsible, and it's only iwi who touch the appropriate iwi who touch the po. So we've made a concerted effort around that pocket of the assets, so we're quite confident there. It often happens about our level of detail. So certainly the new stuff is all programmed. The bronzes are quite easy to see and do a program for. There are still some outliers that perhaps are on the end of their life and have therefore had less work done on, and they're the ones we're going to have the conversation around deaccessioning or saying, hey, they've had their day, and that's going to be the difficult questions.
And my last question was, just for the committee's sake, can you just tell me about the Judy Miller that was going to go into Heron Park, and both Albert Eden and on the cusp of Albert Eden and the Foe?
Yeah. Heron Park's an interesting park. That's the one you come to the fork in the road and you look down into Newland and it sort of falls away to nothing. And we identified it as a site needing a bit of love and something to be a sort of a gateway or something. And so we commissioned, did an EOI for a few works. One of them was boy walking. We love boy walking, and we do the graphic and put the VR, and it looked tiny in that park and it didn't work, but we loved the work, so we relocated that to Potters Park. The one that we chose for Heron Park was a Judy Miller work called Pink Ribbon, and we did the VR, you can walk through, you can put on the goggles and do all that sort of stuff. And in our feasibility, we found that actually it's an amazing work, but in that site, it would have looked really, really small. And actually, we needed to spend probably $30 million to make it of a scale to impact. And we didn't understand until we'd got through to that point. It's because the boundaries disappear. It's the site you're trying to fill goes all the way to the ranges. It didn't work there, and there was just something wrong. So we went back to the artist before we'd spent the money on starting to build and the point of no return. Went back to the artist and say, hey, these are our concerns. And she was amazing in terms of her response. And we're in the process now of exploring new sites, because what we don't want to do is just boldly go ahead because we've, on a piece of paper, said that this is going to work. We've got to make sure in every gateway it's still the right decision and it's the most impactful. So we're exploring other options. And
So what, you're looking at a kapor for, a bean or something for Heron Park?
No, you're not getting another one. Heron Park will stay on our scoped sites of needing attention, but one of the conversations that we've had with this particular site is perhaps the answer is a collaboration with, say, parks, or it's a landscaping thing that actually creates those boundaries and usability and will be accessed by people.
Good on you, Councillor Clough. Thank you for always having that passion for public art. Councillor Philip Bainer.
Thank you, Chair, and my Lord Lover, Richard. Richard, I want to go back to slide 6 of your presentation, which is inclusion and representation, and then you've got the 4 that are new. So is there a budget for inclusion and representation? Mm-hmm. And has that budget been increased as a result of the 4 new ones?
Yes, I think through the chair, what you're probably asking is, has the other lines in that been reduced to accommodate them? And the answer is no. So the Pacific program is still the same size, the Asian program is still the same size, youth still the same size, interculturals and rainbow, seniors and accessibility are modest budgets to add to those others. So we won't do a rainbow program by itself. What we will do is say perhaps look at an event within the Pacific Arts program and extend it to ensure that it is reaching rainbow communities. So we haven't robbed anyone. The extra money, where that's come from, we have for a number of years had administration budgets and responsive budgets that typically responded to things that we didn't know were happening, or they were overspends, etc. We are now confident in our planning and our processes that we've been able to remove those and actually dedicate them to programs. So we don't foresee our contingencies being used for other things.
Okay, and this is to the point that Councillor Clough mentioned around, he would love to increase the budget, and all that needs to be done depending on what happens at the end of this year is to obviously put a recommendation up there. So with, I think, Chair, moving forward, and the question is, if there is a need for extra budget as a result of new initiatives, and I totally agree with the 4 that have come in, and maybe others, is there, will a conversation be had with Chair, Deputy Chair, or whoever of the committee in regards to that?
Through Madam Chair, this budget has been set for the year and we are confident we can deliver within this budget.
Yeah.
I, like you, would love more money for lots of things, but I actually think I and my department have a responsibility to deliver, firstly, programs that are proven, and this allows us to do proof of concept and be really confident in what we're doing, why we're doing it, and who we're impacting. And the same goes for public art. I want to sit here in the future and in the LTP debates and ask for more money, but also have confidence around the table that what we are delivering has worked and is delivering everything that we're promising. So this year is very much about using our budget, staying within our budget, and documenting the impact of what we're doing so we can have that conversation in a way that is not just about decorating your city or making your city fun, but it's about having the conversations that we want to have with the community and telling our stories of who we are, where we've been, and where we're going.
And Chair, just my last question on, Richard, you mentioned around Waitangi Ki Manukau event and possibly the Waitangi Day commemoration programming. Now, knowing the history to the Manukau event and you stating that the preference now is to go back to the community to deliver, the budget that's in attachment A for both events that I've just mentioned, will that budget also be going to the community iwi or mana whenua? Because, yeah, look, will that follow? Because I just don't want it that we set them up to fail.
Yeah. And to answer that, our partnership originally, which came to an end very amicably, it was just time to change it. The changes, and this goes across all of our programs, we often have to re-talk about budgets and stuff at a council level because things have changed, environmental stuff, employment law, Vulnerable Children's Act, all those things. And we change our budgets a lot, but we often don't have the conversation about our partners trying to deliver the same thing in that same environment. And what had happened in the last partnership is we were doing more and more in-house to sort of do that sort of back of house stuff, and their ability to respond was diminishing a little bit. So we're very clear that any future partnership and the conversations that we're having now will define what council does and what council needs to do, and we will retain that money, but the rest of the money will transfer over, but we'll be very clear about the costs. We know that we know how to end-to-end cost the event now. So once it came back into council, we created manuals, we understood contracts, etc., etc. So hopefully, when we enter our new partnership, it'll be stage by stage. So it won't all just be here's money, just do it. It will be staged, it will be guided, and we'll still be a partner all the way. But we're very much very committed to ensuring they have enough money to actually do it successfully. Otherwise, there's no point.
Chair, I just reserve my right to speak in regards to that, that's all. In regards to the...
Then do it now.
Yeah?
Because then the last speaker is going to be Councillor Cooper.
Okay. Richard, I want to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap as what we did for myself, knowing the history, to Toi o Manukau. I just don't want to fall into the same trap, and this is why it's important that we don't set up, whether it be mana whenua or iwi, to fail. Because I'm not going to go over the history in regards to why I believe it failed and it had to come back in to council. I just don't want to make that same mistake again, and they end up failing, and we had a lot of issues with that. Now, I mean, again with the budget, yet that'll be a decision for the new council to end up making once discussions with iwi, mana whenua end up taking place. But, you know, that's only in that particular, those two around the Manukau event. I congratulate you and your team in regards to the whole program. The inclusion of those four, I believe, is finally come to fruition. And I know that the staff have looked at it, and here's an opportunity now as a result of moving some of the budgets around to incorporate the 4 new ones. So congratulations to that. And also the public art. I have a keen interest in regards to public art, even though I don't like that lonely boy all by himself with no family. But, you know, I just sort of, poor lonely boy. But look, I just wanted to... Sorry, what? Sorry. I know, poor fella. I just feel sorry every time I drive past him. I feel like crying. But look, with this, just want to say thank you to your team around this program. Kia ora.
Thank you, and your points are noted.
Cooper and Member Blair.
So, thank you, Richard. Trudy, I always enjoy talking about the public art aspect of what you do. Are there any, I mean, we've got a lot, Waitaku did a lot of public art, so we've got quite a lot in Henderson, etc. But we've got a new town in Westgate, in Te Hoa Auru Park and Kopupaka Reserve, which is an internationally award-winning park. We haven't got any art up there. Are there any plans to look at anything, or in the town square and Te Manawa Square, etc., you know, to sort of enhance the multi-million dollars we've already spent there, you know, to just make it a bit more interesting?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And sometimes people don't notice art, but it still impacts them. And hopefully that's the case with Te Manawa. So the... All right, outside, yeah. So inside we've spent a fair bit. Outside we looked at it, particularly the square, and thought actually the art that we would like to see there is activation, not actually a physical item. We were included in the first initial spots, and our assessment was that actually it was a beautiful, restful space and probably didn't need something. But obviously we're always scoping for years in advance, and there's...
I'm thinking of Kopupaka, because it's quite a lovely walking area and a lot of water elements and things like that, and it might be good going forward. There will be people living near there, and so that would be great to be thinking about even some sort of something that complements that kind of environment. Thank you.
Fair point.
Thank you, Councillor. Member Blair.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair. I won't be long, but I'm just interested with the, by the way, great report, interested in the treaty settlements, the space that's happening, and the difficult path you'll have with the iwi settling, and then that's their whenua, and then other Māori artists coming in to place cultural markers on that whenua from different, that are outside of the iwi. For example, if Te Kauramaki for Waitakere Rangers, it would be difficult to see from a tribe from, say, an artist from the South Island putting a gateway or a significant Māori art there. So how do you kind of reconcile that?
Yeah, that's interesting. That was we're doing a bit of work on taxonomy at the moment. So we're trying to understand what is the difference between something touching the whenua as po whenua, as a marker, as opposed to telling a narrative. So our policy says that we are committed to telling a narrative of Māori. And we've learned in the few years that is changing in terms of a Te Ao Māori worldview is different from a mana whenua story. And in fact, our approach in Matariki tells really richness, because it's just stepping back from Te Ao Māori and really delving into those individual iwi stories. So we want to do more of that to understand ourselves. We have to understand when we're doing a narrative versus a this is us kind of thing. Because some of the most powerful narratives, and this leads into interculturalism, is when we get a matawaka actually interpret a narrative or a theme of manaakitanga from a different perspective. We are committed to having everyone represented, and from time to time that will be an artist from Asia interpreting what is a local narrative or theme, and they might be joined with mana whenua as a guide, or working in together. There's a lot of conversations to be had yet to understand that. There's also a point with beyond just marking place, which is quite clear. Po whenua and saying this land is ours is a really clear thing. But we also don't want to prohibit the sorts of artists that we engage, because we do want everyone to be involved. And we often have people say, well, we don't want anyone outside Auckland, for example. and we talk to the artist, and we say, put that to the artist who is an Aucklander and say, do you want to be banned from ever working in Christchurch or in Sydney? And actually, it's a different lens again. So we've got to balance that between what is the aspirations of our Māori artists, which is to actually make a living and not be confined to an area, but also respect and tell the stories of that underlie it. So we've got a long way to go to solve that. We're working on some principles at the moment, and we're trialling with the Wynyard Quarter that idea about mana whenua stories and mana whenua artists versus matawaka, and interesting places like the Wynyard Quarter and down there where there are multiple interests, and that is a balancing act, because we know that art designed by a
Or I
committee.
thought there's only one. It was us, but no.
Multiple
You've
regions.
answered
yeah.
my question
Yeah.
very well. Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to move on. Really great discussion. And again, Richard, thank you so much for this awesome work. I'm going to put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And please know that you have our overwhelming support for this critical work. It's not decorating the city, it's actually making the city a place where people feel safe and valued and seen. Thank
Thank you for your time.